Okay, River Rouge Panthers, this is Mr. Cruz. This is U.S. history. This is our second video for this week. Yesterday, we learned about the Great Depression, the Great Crash. Now we're going to learn what happened after Herbert Hoover loses the election. He loses to what most historians consider the second greatest president of all time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We're going to learn a lot about him from this point on. So he was known as FDR. So FDR comes in to one of the worst situations a president has ever walked into. You know, maybe second only to Lincoln coming in 1860 in, the beginning of the Civil War. This is a bad situation. The country is in economic ruins, as you learned yesterday. But he has a program, and the name of that program, his idea, it's called the New Deal. The New Deal. And please keep in mind, in my videos, what am I giving you? I'm giving you test answers. When you go to college and there's some dude lecturing for 3 hours, before you go, oh man, this is boring, flip your script and realize they're giving you the test answers. When you realize a lecture is the teacher giving you test answers, it should click a little better. Okay, so right here you see a picture of FDR. This is something he said. I never forget that I live in a house owned by all the American people and that I have been given their trust. Okay, he was a pretty good guy. So he comes in the Great Depression. He has this idea, this New Deal to get the country back on its feet. First thing he wants to do is fix the banks. He declared a banking crisis. He closed all the banks. It was a 4-day bank holiday. He passed an Emergency Banking Relief Act. Okay, it was passed, of course, with the help of Congress. It allowed only sound banks to reopen. Good, solid banks reopened. Banks that were, questionable remained closed. And he had these things called fireside chats. Before smartphones, before the internet, even before TV was really big. People listened to the radio. You had radio shows. The family would, mom and dad and the kids would get around to the radio and listen to the radio. You got your news, your entertainment. It wasn't just music back then. There was a lot of different shows. Abbott and Costello was a famous radio show. He started having what he called fireside chats. He would get on the radio and he would just talk to the American people. It wasn't like a rehearsed speech. He didn't talk down to them. He made people feel like he was part of the family, and people would get around the radio and listen to his fireside chats. And it was like he was there just talking to you. He was really good at relating to the average person. I'll teach you later on how that happened, because he's born wealthy, but something happens to him where he interacts with just the regular common folk, and he learns a lot. But people trusted him. He won the election. I think he only lost like 2 or 3 states. It was a landslide election when he beat President Hoover. And he's trying to get people to trust him and trust banks again, because people are so scared to put their money back in the banks because of what we learned yesterday. If the banks can't get money, it's going to be hard to restart the economy. So he has to talk to people and get their trust back and get them to put their money back in the banks. He's saying the banks, it's going to be a better deal. We got this New Deal. So remember, the name of his program is the New Deal. Now, there's 3 main goals of the New Deal. Keep in mind, besides teaching you history, I'm trying to show you how to get a college degree. It's not as difficult as people think. When a teacher or professor starts saying there's 3 goals, and they put a number on something, in your mind you should be going, it's going to be on a test. So make sure you know 3 goals of the New Deal. Relief for the unemployed, which we talked about yesterday. Plans for recovery. Reforms to prevent more depressions. He doesn't want this to ever happen again. And some of these reforms are still around right now. You are going to benefit from some of the reforms of FDR. Some of you already have. You don't even know it. So there's all kinds of acronyms in the New Deal. I don't expect you to memorize them all. Just understand their overall big ideas. So for unemployment, he forms a civilian conservation corps, the CCC. He has the PWA, Public Works Administration, the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. These are government programs where people are going to get back to work. You're going to help restore the country. You're sitting there with no job. The private sector, companies aren't hiring you. The government's going to hire you. And you're going to help fix some of the things in this country. The NRA, the National Recovery Act. The AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. This is what I mentioned a little bit in yesterday's lesson. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. When you go in, I mentioned it in yesterday's video, you go in the bank, you'll see a sticker, FDIC. Remember how I told you people went to the bank to get their money and their money was gone? And the bank's like, we're closed, bro. Sorry. This FDIC was to make sure that never happened again, so people would trust the banks. Like I told you yesterday, if my bank gets robbed or it blows up, my money's still there. You know, I'm cool. That's because of this, because of the FDIC. My bank just can't close or tell me, yeah, we don't have your money anymore. They can't do that. Security and Exchange Commissions is formed. And here's that sticker you'll see in the bank, the FDIC. These are some pictures, logos. So this is a huge one. He comes up with Social Security. Okay, what's Social Security? Depending on your situation at home, your bills at home may be being paid by somebody's Social Security check. People were retiring and they were broke. You know, a lot of working class people, they just live paycheck to paycheck their whole life. Then when they're too old to work anymore, they retire, they don't have any money. Social Security was meant as you're working, it takes some of your money and invests it for you. So after you retire, you still get a check every month. At least you can, you know, make a living, have food. Hopefully your house is paid off by the time you retire. You're not looking at a big house payment, etc. But this is, if it wasn't for FDR, you wouldn't have Social Security. We still benefit from that now. So this is a picture of what people were doing. The people didn't have jobs. It's the Great Depression. Companies aren't hiring because companies aren't making any money. So the government hired him. He created these programs, worked for the government, put in the sewer line. We're going to help our infrastructure and at the same time put people back to work. Remember we talked about yesterday, the domino effect? This could restart the economy. If these guys now have money in the pocket, what are we going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to spend it, right? They start maybe buying clothes for their kids, buying food, buying coffee. Now you're helping the local businesses. Now they're making money. Now they can start hiring people again, right? We're trying to jumpstart that economy again. Get money in people's pockets, get people working. That's how the economy goes, like we talked about yesterday. Okay, so again, you don't have to memorize all these, but I just want you to understand. You'll see an overall theme. So the program, the Emergency Banking Relief Act, what was its purpose? It gave the executive branch the right to regulate banks. The Farm Credit Act, what was its purpose? Refinance loans to keep farmers from losing their land. The CCC, what was the purpose? It created jobs for single unemployed young men. The AAA, what was the purpose? It paid farmers to grow less. This was controversial, but it helped them make more money by growing less. The price of their crops went up. The TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, that's an important one. It built dams and power plants in the Tennessee Valley. This is stuff we needed anyway. Let's do it. Let's get people to work. The FDIC, what I just told you about. It guaranteed deposits in individual bank accounts. The National Industrial Recovery Act, it established fair competition laws. Later on, it was declared unconstitutional. Civil Works Administration provided jobs for the unemployed. The WPA, it created jobs in construction, research, and the arts. The NYA, it provided part-time jobs for students. The National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act it was known as, it recognized unions' right to bargain collectively. This was important. So like auto workers, like when I worked at Ford, I belonged to the UAW. Now I'm a teacher, I belong to a teacher union. It's so you can get a fair deal, decent pay, decent health insurance, a decent retirement. You know, give the working class people a decent wage. The Social Security Act probably the biggest one. Still very important to this day. Some of you may be getting your bills paid right now by Social Security. This provided government aid to the retired and the unemployed. So you see the overall theme here. All these programs are to either help people get back to work so they can make some money, give them confidence in their banks, and kind of protect them in the future when they get older. Overall, the purpose of all these, get the economy back on its feet and try to end the Great Depression. That's the purpose here. Now, this is very controversial. Historians argue to this day, if when you graduate high school, come take one of my college classes at Madonna University or Schoolcraft College, and we can have a nice college debate on this. But right now, for a high school class, we're not going to get into this too much, but there's a lot of debate. Did the New Deal really work or not? Or was it a lot of show? It doesn't completely end the Great Depression. Some people argue how much did it help. Some say it didn't help at all. That would be my dog, Elwood. I got to let him in. Sorry, hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. The dog is in. All right, so a lot of businessmen don't like the New Deal. But it gave the country confidence. It ended the banking crisis. It helped with some jobs. Infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, I want to make sure you know what that word means. You know, buildings, schools, bridges, roads, artwork, potholes. Is your garbage getting picked up? This is the infrastructure of a city. All these things, right? They got to be worked on. Okay, so some people opposed President Roosevelt's plan, okay? The government said big business is doing too much, and the government shouldn't tell us what to do. Some said FDR isn't doing enough. He should share the wealth. Heavy tax on the wealthy. Give everybody a home and a car, right? Huey Long was talking about this. He ends up getting assassinated. Father Coughlin, he was right here from the Michigan area, I think in Royal Oak, probably about 30 minutes away from River Rouge. He was mad at FDR for not being tough enough on big business. He was a very controversial guy. People were saying give pensions to anyone 60 and over. Give jobs to younger people. Now, 11 of his New Deal plans were ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. President gets new judges. New judges would favor the New Deal. Friends and enemies are very upset. They think FDR is like having like a power grab, right? It's too much power for a president. President's not supposed to be a king, right? In middle school, you should have learned about the branches of government, right? The judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch, right? Balance of power. FDR doesn't get everything he wants, but he does do enough, and he does get enough to get a lot of these New Deal programs. A lot of these things I mentioned, you should kind of recognize. I bet most of you have heard of Social Security before, right? And we benefit from today. This comes from FDR. Now, here's the irony. World War II is going to officially start on September 1st, 1939, when the Nazis invade Poland. I'm going to teach you all of this later. The U.S. is going to jump in after Pearl Harbor, which I'll teach you later. Ironically, what really ended the Great Depression was World War II. Like World War II, you think about it, horrible, right? Terrible. For the economy, ironically, it was good. A lot of these factories we hear in Detroit, right here in River Rouge, Willow Run, nobody was making anything. Nobody was buying anything. All of a sudden, when the war started, we got to make war supplies. Instead of making cars, we're making planes, we're making tanks, we're making ammunition, we're making army jeeps. World War II, most historians would agree, is what really ended the Great Depression, not the New Deal. How much did the New Deal help? It's open for debate. It depends what teacher you ask. It depends what book you read. But there were some good programs that we even benefit from today. So that's FDR and the New Deal.